Well, from what I understand, he must have seen me through the window here. And for all I know, he even saw my boyfriend leave.
Column, big Pontiac, Mary King, Lincoln, 697, Mary King, Lincoln, 697, Pontiac.
Where are you located?
Police emergency. Hello?
Hello, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. The phone's on the floor.
What's the problem?
Well, I've just been raped and
Give me a description of the guy. Was he black or white?
he was white.
Okay, how old was he? Did you know him?
No.
Okay, but how old was he?
Oh, probably 25.
Okay, what color was his hair?
Dark, medium brown.
How tall was he?
About 5'10".
All right, we'll send somebody right over.
My hands are tied.
I was scared to death. Obviously, I was just so frightened. But I thought to myself, almost on an intuition basis, it wasn't as if you're beyond thinking, but your intuition tells you something. And it told me that this man didn't want to hurt me if he didn't have to. And so I told him by shaking my head that I wouldn't say anything. He let go of me. Then later on, I began to have enough time to think, and I said to him, you better hurry up and get out of here because my boyfriend's coming back and you don't want him to catch you.
This particular type of rape is what we call a hot prowl, which is where the suspect has broken into the victim's home and sexually assaulted her there.
It could happen anywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be this type of an area. It could be downtown, it could be in the financial district, it could be out in strictly a residential area. Anyone, anywhere, they could be the target of a rapist.
I notice people watching me now. I'm bordering on a little bit of paranoia now, and I think that's good, because I know that people do watch you and do see where you go.
What you must do is be aware of where you are, be aware of who you're with, the whole circumstances, your whole environment. Just totally be aware.
I know that it can happen to me, and I think that's one of the most important things is to realize that it can happen to anybody and not think it's going to happen to the other guy. I know that's not the case.
The sex offender today has a greater number of available women to choose from. There are more working women, single women living alone, not with their families or with men.
She has the means and ability to go anywhere at any time.
Because of the mobility and the visibility of today's women, she must learn to understand the rapist. Most of the cases that come across our desk are textbook in its nature. The type of assault is consistent with those assaults we've seen in the past. For today's woman to understand the rapist, she's got to learn to understand the man.
Before I got married, when I had committed some of these rapes, I had regular girlfriends that I was going out with. So it wasn't something, that was necessary. It wasn't what I was looking for, and it wasn't what he was looking for, and it wasn't what he was looking for. It was the degradation, the humiliation, and that I chose, not, consciously said, well, I think I'll do this because that's more humiliating, but that's how it worked out.
They are things. Boy, you could be a woman, you could be a used car. At that time, it would matter not. In his case, when he needed it, there was a woman present, and he raped her. When he needed it, there was a man present, so he raped him. At that point, no matter later, if you look back at it and say, that was a human being I was dealing with, at that instant, it was an object. It had no more value than that.
No, okay, but a rip-off
I've had more
rape...
trouble with women. That's the answer, I think, right there. I've had more trouble, and I think these people here have had the same thing. They've had more trouble with women.
I mean, they're the cause of of your frustrations.
Well, if you
Not being able to understand and being able to work it out.
Not being able to understand women.
Right.
I was walking along here around about sunset. A guy comes along and told me to get into the car. And I felt, it's just another guy, trying to pick up a lady or something, And I kept walking. And as I was walking, he drove the car right in front of me. And he got out and put me into the car. And I really couldn't think at that time. I couldn't do nothing but cry,
When you're on the street, be aware if anybody's behind you. Don't go in your house if there's some stranger that appears to be following you. Go to a phone booth, go to a store, Go to any business that's open.
The best advice we can give to women is to be aware that the possibility exists that they could be raped, and to try to avoid a situation where they are vulnerable to this type of an attack.
We drove around for a while, and then we came to this place, which looked something like the dumps, and I was coming to my senses, and I thought maybe I would get away, you know, by getting out the car. And he snatched me back into the car, and he snatched my earring off, you know. So, like, just by looking at him, he looked to be about 6'5" or 250 pounds, and I knew I had to think of another way to try to get out of this, some type of way.
The best defense is once she finds herself in a situation where an overt act is taking place against her, she has to use her intuition. She has to use her wits. She must remain cool. Sometimes it's impossible to avoid the sex act. Other times, by talking, by screaming, by trying to explain different situations, maybe she could talk her way out of it.
When we got to this place, I realized that I would have to talk to him in order to convince him on letting me go. And one of the ways I tried was saying that I was pregnant, and he didn't believe me about that. So right away I went into the story of saying I was 17. And when I said that, he changed. And he told me to put my clothes on, told me to get out the car, and then he drove off. So I feel the only way that I got out of that was to use my head, you know, and if it was to happen again, I'm going to take karate.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh. Okay, this time when you do it, here, plant forward, so you come backwards. Stand with my hand, right. Okay, kick. Society, in a way, condones it, because last year there were like 20 movies in which they showed women being raped.
Sure.
But in like Deliverance, where some guy's getting raped, you know, people are shocked. But nobody thinks anything of it. When women are raped in films, it's just the way things are. And women don't have to take that anymore.
I mean, I really think it's rotten. You know, and I mean, you can talk all day and all night about what women can do to protect themselves. What can they do? All right, we're doing this.
The best thing to do if you're in a rape situation is submit, submit, submit until it hurts, because it's going to hurt a lot less in the long run.
They have fairly decent
I'll give
programs.
you a pretty good example.
Programs
of self-defense be damned, man. When I got a knife against your throat, I don't care what you know. If I'm willing to kill you, the first move you make, you're going to be dead.
That's my point. What I'm saying is that they have methods of self-defense, they have programs for girls, but the average girl in the street that's hitchhiking says, it couldn't happen to me, so she doesn't take that self-defense course.
Self-defense course wouldn't help her, man.
A self-defense course would get her killed is what it'd get.
Hey, Jeff, the woman that I was with, Jeff, she fought back and she's dead.
At the time that he had the knife to my throat, I thought back, you think so fast at that time, and I thought back over my whole life. And I thought, I don't care how expensive or how much of a hassle it is. I'm just never going to hitchhike again because it's not worth it. And I could die just like that, and it's just not worth it to me, that's all.
An alarmingly high percentage of the incidents that are reported to us in our detail are the result of hitchhiking. More and more nowadays, girls are using hitchhiking as a mode of travel. They'll hitchhike to school, they'll hitchhike to work, and even frequently they'll hitchhike just to go to a social engagement.
Quite a few of our rape homicides have started out as hitchhikes, and the victim ends up in some canyon somewhere or under some deserted warehouse area, and she's a victim for the homicide act.
You know, when a girl gets in a car, she has no control of the situation once that car takes off. A good example of this is Nancy. Now, here's a girl that's been hitchhiking for years all over the country. She goes to state college, frequently hitchhikes to school. She's never really had any bad problems. Those few fellows made passes at her. That was really about it. Until one morning.
I got in about here. I asked him if he was going to state college, and he said he was. So I got in the car, and he started asking me questions about school and told me that his car was having trouble. And then he told me to pick up some glasses. And he just told me, he didn't ask, and I didn't like his tone. I sort of was a little afraid, and then when I handed them to him, he told me to put them on, and I noticed he had a knife in his hand. And I wanted to just jump out of the car, but we were going too fast. So I told him that I was afraid to put the glasses on because they were completely covered with tape and I wouldn't be able to see. So I started crying, and I was pretending that I was freaked out, and that was why I couldn't cooperate better with him, and I didn't want to put the glasses on because I was afraid. I offered him my money and everything, and I kept looking around to see if there were any people around who could help me, and I was raising my voice and screaming as much as I could without openly defying him. And I had my hand on the door. It was hard to find. It was like a sports car, and I had the door open, and I was holding it shut with my arm, and I wanted to get out as fast as I could, but he didn't seem to be slowing down, and finally he told me to be quiet, and I wouldn't be quiet. I just kept screaming, and so he slowed the car down and reached over me to roll up the window, and when he did, I jumped out of the car and I ran down the street.
A lot of the rapes that I committed, I probably wouldn't have. I would still have done something, and I might still have raped, but not near as often, and not near as easily, if those girls weren't out there hitchhiking, you know.
It's their right to do it, but it's not the fact. And if you're going to look at it from a realistic point of view, just be realistic, you know. You're taking a chance of getting ripped off, you know, and how do you cut down those chances?
A person has the right to go about and do whatever he wants to do, as long as it doesn't endanger or conflict with what somebody else does. And they do. But there should still be, as you say, the fear or the awareness, whatever you want to call it, that a situation like this could happen.
What have I done? Not much. There's not much I can tell you.
What's your name?
Tony.
Tony, I missed it the first time around.
Hey, I like you. What's your name?
Sally.
Sally. You drink here often?
No, this is the first time I've ever been. Well, it's the first time I've been. Whatever comes in your head.
He was normal, pleasant. And I liked him. He was good looking and he was nice, and we talked a lot about psychology. Anyway, everybody had a good time, and got late, and I wanted to go home. And he said he'd walk me.
Mary was one of these girls who was a victim of what we call the casual acquaintance.
I wanted to take a taxi, but I live very close, so he insisted on walking me home, so I saw no harm in it.
The relationship that Mary was looking for was never there at all. This man was a rapist. He had no intention of stopping once he got inside her apartment.
He went into my bedroom and grabbed me and pulled me in. And I said to him, no, and he turned around, he was so bizarre. It was just totally different from what he was before. And he had no expression in his eyes. I said yes. And he started hitting me, and I started struggling and screaming. And I got away from him and ran to the front door and opened the door, and I was screaming, and he got between me and the door, and he shoved me against the wall, and then he started hitting me more, and he kept threatening me. And I realized that unless I did what he told me, that he was going to kill me. He said he would hurt me if I didn't cooperate, and he was not going back to prison for anybody, and so I had to do what he wanted to do, and so I did.
For whatever reason, more often than not, if a victim is going to be not only sexually assaulted, but physically assaulted, it so very frequently will come from a casual relationship.
And the way I act differently is now I don't have this naive attitude that everybody's good and nobody's ever going to hurt me. I just get so afraid. I get physically upset and everything else. And I think about it all the time, and I'm shaking, I'm nervous all the time. And it could have been a lot worse. He didn't really beat me up that bad or anything. I just really pity the women that had to go through all that.
I'll tell you one thing, we can't give you any advice what to do when something happens to you. The only suggestion the only thought we could leave with you is that it's far better if the sex crimes detail ends up handling a case that you might be involved in than the homicide detail. You must be cool, you've got to use your wit, you've got to use what's ever available to you once an act starts.
And again, be aware of who and what is around you. We don't want to try to make anybody feel paranoid, but it's much greater to look over your shoulder once than to find somebody grabbing you and pushing you into a car.
Basically, I don't go anywhere anymore by myself. Usually I'll take a cab, or there's a guy with me, or I don't too much catch the bus by myself anymore.
I just don't hitchhike anymore. I used to do it all the time, anywhere I wanted to go. But now I'm just too scared. I might not be so lucky the next time.
Just in general, being more aware, just paying attention, not trusting everybody, not assuming that everybody's okay, because they're not. There's nuts all over this place.
If you are the victim of a sexual assault, then we ask you to let us know about it, to come to the police, to advise the police. So often we hear of girls who, through one means or another, we hear a girl was a victim of assault. She did not come to the police. We can't undo what's already happened to you. It's not like you lost your purse or your television set. We can't get that back for you. What we could hope that you might do is feel responsible enough to assist us in preventing this person from doing it to another one like you.